remain underrepresented in leadership positions across all sectors. We asked leaders in development what advice they would give to women wanting to take on a leadership role.
Yeah, this is another topic that's very, very close to my heart. And I have, throughout my career, my professional life and in personal life, I struggled with this. And it's an ongoing battle. But I think some recommendations I personally have on this is, first is find mentors, other women leaders who are in executive positions, who may be in the same field or different field, but identifying mentors and working with them, asking them questions that you're grappling with, asking for advice in situations, challenging situations where, there's no gender lens applied to the organizational structures, that I found very helpful. That is, and I would highly recommend for other young women who are trying to, answer this question and faced with this challenge to do. Also, something also from personal experience is what might be helpful is forming informal circles or even working groups with other like-minded women who are facing the same challenge, and have monthly meetings, meetings at somebody's house or, in whichever form, and really just asking those difficult questions that may not be easy to ask at work, in the work environment. That I found very helpful too. And what I also noticed that when we meet as a group, it's very likely that all of us work for organizations that already know each other. So then if there is this group message, that would likely to be more precedent setting, and the message is more likely to get out and reach, the ears of the directors. And so that I found very helpful. And I think just again, however challenging, not to be afraid, ask questions. Is there gender lens being applied? Any projects that, one is taking on as an organization, asking question, are there women and LGBTQI leaders in the project? And I think it's important to not make assumptions that, for example, if the executive director of the organization is a male, therefore he may not understand. I've been surprised many times. I think it's a matter of making your voice heard. I had experienced situations where I really felt like I was alone. And what's interesting is that didn't mean that the rest of the team, the rest of the organization were all men, and there were other women, but that didn't mean that they were on the same page with me. So it's around assumptions, and sometimes creating allies, finding allies. You could be surprised who could be your ally. In terms of quotas, I think I've always supported quotas but it has to be in parallel with your own efforts to make yourself heard. Because otherwise, without quotas, it just seems like it's a really uphill battle in terms of getting women to leadership positions. I think to this question, my only advice is to just not give up and try to have those conversations with, trying to find colleagues who might listen to you. Also talking to other organizations. But I personally admit that I've been in situations where I simply left the organization because I got frustrated. Yeah.
So I can only reflect on my own experience, and I was appointed to my most senior leadership position in employment was when I was 32 years old, and it was to head a program in an area that I, on reflection, think I knew very little about, and probably nothing. But so I guess reflecting on that, though, it gave me an opportunity that is why I'm where I am today. And I think embracing an opportunity and not being afraid to is really important. But I was really clear at the time. I had 3 young children, and I was clear that there were boundaries around what I could and couldn't do. And I stuck to those boundaries no matter what. It didn't stop me from doing my job. I had the flexibility I needed, but it was in a very male-dominated field. It was in a very discipline-dominated field that I wasn't trained in. And I think the advice I would give would be to draw on the support wherever it exists, and to know what you don't know and where you can get that knowledge from. I wasn't afraid to admit that. I wasn't afraid to ask for help. But I also think it's really important that you understand why you're there and that what you bring to the situation. And I knew that I had a unique role to play, and I was really strong about that. So I think for me, I could look back on my career and identify 2 or 3 people who've had a remarkable impact and who I've learned just an enormous amount from. They haven't been formal mentors, they haven't been supervisors, but they've been people who I've just picked their brains, I've gone to, I've sought advice from, and I've watched the way they operate, and I think that's really important. I also think for women now, they need to be conscious of the opportunities that exist. You know, there is a lot more focus now on diversity and equity in leadership roles, and I think that women should not be afraid to put their hand up, even if they don't think they're quite ready yet, or their male peers may think that they're more competitive for it. There is a very big drive to support women in leadership.
So as a woman giving advice, especially as an Asian woman, there are 2 main things I'd like to say. The first one is DDY, which is don't doubt yourself. And this is an acronym that I share with a lot of my friends, because it's also the support networks that you will build that will help you in your leadership. And the other one, apart from DDY, is also DBN, which is don't be naive. Because a lot of the time as well, when we get into further and further in our careers, it's easy to think that everyone will also be as kind and as nice as us, but that might not necessarily be the case. Obviously, it's always good to be kind and nice and tolerant, but I don't think that's enough, and we need to push forward, and that means not only having the courage to put our ideas ahead and possibly not take things personally if we are rejected, but also once we're at the table to make sure that we're not just taking the seats but letting other people sit with us.
I think the most important part of getting women into more leadership issues is to find ways to get visibility for the issue. I think that the main reason that it's so difficult to get women into these leadership positions is because so many people just don't see that gender issue as a pertinent issue. And so raising awareness around it, being really clear when there are people who aren't hiring enough women or who are continually promoting men but not offering the same opportunities to women because they're probably not aware of what they're doing. And I think a really important part of that approach is making it clear that you're trying to advance the opportunities for all women within the organisation, not just for yourself. So it's not so much that you're taking this particular point of view because you think you personally deserve that promotion, but because you know that this happens to men all the time and the same opportunities aren't happening to women. And I guess another really important part of that is solidarity with other women. You know, it's so much more difficult to speak out by yourself. But if there are 3, 4, 5, 10 women who are talking about the same issue, then that's when people can start to really recognise that they do have a bias. Whereas if it's just one person raising the concern, it's a bit easier for people to dismiss it as you being bitter that you didn't get the promotion.